Have you any idea how many vehicles have been put in a cage under false pretenses? The tense, past, present, future. I'll just give you one example. Did I ever share with you what happened one time when it's a long story, and particularly when you have to put it into the context of fine-tuning gate timers and how big those files are and how long it would take to break it all down. That's an enormous amount of energy to process. How it's all connected when you're experiencing that many files, that many recordings at once. Right? It would take time. Okay. So let's see if I can do the short version of this. I appeared in court and was charged with driving under the influence of alcohol, even though I was at home when I was arrested. And I'd been there for about a half hour. But I was cited, like a permit, if you will, an operating permit. How that operates. I was given a citation to appear before a black mirror. And now I'm being held to account. So you know how it is between point-to-point transactions of electrical speed. And so I went to court to go to trial. I went through all that, right, including paying a lawyer, right? I'm shifting my electrons. You know how this works with phasing speed, where less is more, to a lawyer. And so I went through a trial. My mother was a witness. I had a couple of witnesses on my side of that case. And as you know, you put 12 people, Why they use number 12? 12 people, what we call 12 people in a box, like a black cube. 12 people in a box are now going to decide your future potential memory recordings as that relates to recording speeds. And so, as we call it, a hung jury, like the tie, the hangman with the tie that Miles Johnson talks about. And what's his name? Tim Refat. Colin Bloy, The Keys to the Kingdom, Disney's Kingdom, The Maze, The Trap, The Experiment Trap, right? And as that relates to evac, shield, and extraction, right? To pull, pull it all in, call it all in, calling all cars, do, the horns, just like the International Association of Firefighters, their logo, right? The cross. The precise center point of balance, the 13th Mother Art, and Starfire Light Cycle. So there were 8 people, okay, who voted to say you're guilty, even though you weren't driving a vehicle, and hadn't been driving a vehicle for 30 minutes. Okay, you had to have been drunk at the time that you were driving the vehicle, even though they weren't there. They did not observe it directly. They did not experience it directly. So this was based on hearsay. Remember the old saying, hearsay and a dime will get you a cup of coffee in 1955. 1955, like a 55 harmonic, the quantum probability math function. And so after it was a hung jury, it was declared, a mistrial. Oh, a mistrial, right? Misinformed, malformations. And so we're allowed to talk to the jurors afterwards to get some, as we call it, feedback, right? Let me know why you voted the way that you did. So here was a juror that said to me, the reason that I voted guilty, that you were guilty, is because you had to have been doing something wrong. There isn't any exceptions to the rule. dealing with rule-based functions, right? The disorder followers. You had to have been doing something wrong because you would not have been arrested unless you were doing something wrong. That RoboCop does not make any errors. That's a false sense of security. The security measures, the metrics, right? The gold standard, right? Purity is the security. The 13th mother art, exact center point of balance, the silver and gold mated Rouget, the one I serve, the grand creator spirit, the core CPU, the central power unit of all sentient life form electrical power. So I just keep that simple. And so you see how that works. Now, how many people do you think that have been put back in another cage when, for example, a guy who was, now we're back to Alcoholics Anonymous and expectations, as that relates to the inverse square as proportional waves as radial neuroions, who have been, if you will, convicted. All they need is one. All they need is one. All they need is one juror to say, you're not guilty. Judgment Day. Rise of the machines. All they need is one to say, you're not guilty. Because the jury's judging you. All right? That's why they got a judge in the courtroom with a black robe on. So how many people do you think that have been put in another cage because some guy, right, who's a sexual energetic vampire, was denied what that energetic vampire was seeking the night before, right? Having a sexual orgy, and was, you know what a denial of service is, right? A service denial. Was denied that service. Now there's an anger monster raging. So you know how energy transfer codes operate as miasma transfer codes. And so that being that's sitting in that box has been holding on to all that energy, right? And now you know what a scapegoat is, right? That defendant doesn't realize that that defendant over there, okay, can make the difference. How many people in that box that come in on that particular day, not the day before the jury was listening to testimony, on that particular day when they're in that room. Ever seen the movie called 12 Angry Men? Did you ever see that movie? Great movie about spiritual battlefield tactics. Yeah, base 12, the center point. And so you can see how this works, how the exchange rate of speed, right, between cell and cellular communication, point-to-point access, the transaction, the rate of speed, and what? Loss and gain of life force, right? And how that relates to electron transport of oxygen and miasma, breathing disorders, needing a resuscitation, a jumper cable, right? And so there's a channel that from time to time I go to because he seems like a really nice guy and he cares about people. He proposes to people when he ends his little videos that be kind, show kindness and compassion towards other people each day. So I have a little bit of a sharing back and forth with him. So because he's providing essentially, he tries to break down how the legal system operates so that it can make sense to somebody, right? And so you know how it, and this morning he was talking about how this particular defendant was allowed to be able to defend themselves. So you know that pure, eternal, absolute love does not need to defend itself, what it is, which is what love is. So you knew how that is when I was a child growing up, what we call approval seeking. And how that relates to what? Harmonic reactions between a non-pressurized state and a pressurized state. Water pressure, right? A vacuum, experiencing the still point of a true vacuum. So I mentioned to him, that any time that the jury is going to be making a decision before they go into that room, you want to do a muscle test on them. You want to run a biofeedback on them. You want to run a scan of their software and scan the energy, the morphic resin codes of that software, and say, listen, when they go through picking a jury and doing software scans, we don't want that person on the jury. They're running the wrong codes. We don't want that person on the jury because they're running the wrong codes. We don't want that person on the jury because they're running the wrong codes. What would happen? That courtroom wouldn't exist. Because that's what it needs. It's our electrical power to power that entire system. That's full circle. That's full circle of fire. A 13th Mother Earth. That's why we're all here. Muevaya.